Jason, what's the truth about building a data center that most people in our industry still don't understand?
We talked a little bit before. That's a very intriguing question because I think you could go down all kinds of different rabbit holes. But I think at the end of the day, when it comes to building a data center, having the type of people that are dedicated to the mission is the part that people don't understand, because that dedication that is needed is generated by the partnership that you form when you go into an endeavor, whether that be with the data center developer, the general contractor, the subcontractors, the architects and engineers. It's almost a symphony, and you have to really foster that, and if you want to have a successful project or a successful endeavor when it comes to building multiple data centers, I think the thing that's missed is that interpersonal relation and that commitment to one another, not to fail for the next one. Me not failing for you, you not failing for me. That's the part that's missed.
It's such an interesting perspective because we tend to attract, me notwithstanding, introverted engineers, and we like to distill things down to a math problem or an engineering problem. And yeah, I think that relational part of it is a truth that can be overlooked or maybe undervalued.
Commoditized, or at least viewed as a commodity.
Yeah. Have you any experience with that? Have you seen that happen before?
I've seen it on both sides. I've seen it just wonderful relationships over years with different like partner subcontractors working for the same developer. Perhaps there's a different one trade or another based on the geography, but just this team environment that's been built. And then I've seen it the other side where they just don't care, and they have the mission. They know what their mission is. They know they got to get it done. They know it has to get done in this time frame on this budget, but that ownership to make sure that each and every person's part is played and just everybody feeling that ownership, it just isn't fostered.
Why do you think that is?
I just think it goes back to what you said. It's like the thing that they fail to realize, fail to yet understand. Because at the end of the day, and when you look at the large efforts that are going on, that's the common denominator.
Yeah. It's interesting as you say that. We have a large number of vets that work for us and in our industry at large. And I'm also a vet, and I didn't know it before I joined the military, but I found that I respond being connected to a mission and a purpose bigger than me. Like, obviously, I've got my immediate job. I've got the overall job, stay alive, accomplish our mission, do things according to the Geneva Convention. And so many people that have that, whether they know it or not, have that mindset, join organizations like ours, and yet, as you're describing, still be at risk. Like that doesn't permeate an org.
I agree, and that's one thing within our organization that we have really, really gotten behind. Our VP of operations was a colonel in the military. He retired and came to work for us, and we have a number of veterans that have come along in our growth. And the thing that I found, and actually another guy who was a veteran, he articulated it in a way that really resonated with me. And what he said was, when you hire people who served, they're already used to doing it for something bigger than themselves. It's not the money. They didn't spend all that time in the military for the money. It's for something else. It's because they wanted to be a part of something. And if you can create an environment where they get to do that every day outside of their military life, and they get to carry those skills and that commitment into the next part of their life, that's where you find that true success. And that's, I believe, and we don't have not everybody in our company is veterans, but a great number of them are. Mm-hmm. And I really see that as the reason that we're special, and a big reason why we're special. Not the only reason, but a big one,
I think that those organizations whose culture is the most robust in our industry that you and I are familiar with, and I'm sure outside the industry, are those that have a culture like this in the United States military. It's command and control also. It's pretty incredible. But you said something that reminded me of that prophet Shane Falco. Does that name ring a bell? You ever heard of Shane Falco? Mm-hmm. He was the quarterback in the movie The Replacement.
I totally know who you're saying.
And he was in the huddle right there at the end, and he said, "Pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory's forever."
That's right.
And so sometimes it's just about the glories forever or the scars. But yeah, I think, the question was, what truth? And yeah, that makes sense. I could see where that would be. When you come onto a site in whatever way, in the past, today, one of these big critical infrastructure sites, is there a way you can look around and tell this thing is on point, it's on project, it's where it's at, or something's not going well here?
Oh, boy. You can absolutely. Almost from right when you pull onto a site, right? Mm-hmm. But just the way the site is organized, the way each trade organized, the way that the developer and the general contractors organizes each trade and gives the trade what they need to be able to be successful, whether that's a clear working environment or just a safe, clear site. And you see both, right? You go into sites where, half the concrete's torn up and there's ditches everywhere and you got to watch out and you can't drive your lifts over on this side or that side. And then you go to data centers where you can practically eat off the floor, mm-hmm. and they're in construction, right? And they sequence their trade delivery in a way where no one's clashing with each other when it comes to the actual delivery side. And I think for me, that's the first indicator, is when you go on the site, it's just, how is it organized? Can you find where you're supposed to park even? It's just like organize, keeping a good house,
Yeah. It's fascinating that you say that. We didn't rehearse this. I remember one of the sites, somebody commented, this is years ago, this is before the current season that we're in, and they had confidence that the project was probably on track because there was a lot of trade people on the site, but there wasn't a lot standing around. And they said that harmony, either someone's got it so under control that even, because this happens, where there might be a project's paused or something. I know where I'm at, so I can shift people around. I'm able to navigate. If you got a North Star, you can navigate. And so I'm able to manipulate, navigate my tradespeople around. And I would never have seen that. I would have just looked at materials or the organization of things sitting there, not the people. Mm-hmm. It feels like that's an old school skill set.
What, you calling me old?
No, just the school you went to. Just the school you went to. What's the biggest shift you've seen in how we're building data centers? You've been around data centers, critical infrastructure, for a long time. Let's just compare it to a decade ago, 5 years ago. What's the biggest shift you've seen?
I'd say on the decade side, it's definitely the modularity, right? Prefab, off-site construction, less people on the work site for shorter amounts of time, mm-hmm. as a result of being able to take some of that stuff off-site. I think that's been pretty impactful, mm-hmm. And what's very interesting to me is the businesses that have been built around that.
Okay.
Just as far as creating opportunity for organizations, perhaps not right where the data center sits, but in another geography where they're able to do manufacturing and employ a whole nother group of people that maybe they never set foot on the data center site, but they are building for that data center offsite.
Is that so? people who might not be familiar with data centers, there are a number of components that go into a data center. When you say prefab and modular, is that all the components? Is it certain, like the electrical room or mechanical? What does that mean to you? How are you thinking about it?
Well, it can be, all the way from the electrical room, right? The whole electrical service and everything gets shipped in on a truck, and then a crane lifts it and puts it into a building, right? There's organizations out there that do that and do that very well. Mm-hmm. But it could be just as simple as, the trapezes that you hang all of your pathway, all your wire baskets and your ladder tray and stuff that hold the cables and the electrical cables going around the data center, building those little trapezes off-site and shipping them on pallets where you don't have people, sitting in there assembling on site. It's done, comes in clean, it's on a pallet, and it comes off the truck, and the only thing you have left is an old pallet.
Do you prefer that?
I think there's a lot of efficiency in that. Absolutely. And the big part is that you don't have so many guys. I mean, we talk about the scale of a data center. Like you asked about the evolution of a data center from 10 years ago until now. I mean, when you were doing a data center back then, if you had a 1 megawatt data center, that's a big deal, right? Maybe I remember sitting in a meeting where they're like, well, we're going to do 24 and 36 megawatt facilities, and those are going to be our choice. And I remember sitting there going, nobody's going to do that, and look at us now. Nobody even wants to look at it if it's less than 100,
Yeah.
So I guess I just look at that and say, we're the evolution. And so to bring it back, what I'm saying is the fact that you don't have all of those tradesmen on site because they're able to produce off-site and send their workmanship into the site to be installed in a smaller amount of time. I think is a pretty great development. And yes, I do. I like that.
How much do we lose from customization? And the reason you're familiar with one of our Atlanta data centers, our big one, Atlanta Metro. At least big by square footage. And there was a lot of bespoke conduit, and it was a brownfield, so it means it was converted from an old building into a new building.
I was here when that happened.
Okay, yeah. We all have those scars. I don't know about glory, but we got the scars. But there's, at least in my mind, I have to resist this. I imagine that I had flexibility at my fingertips if I ran into something. And when I hear modularity, what I have to guard myself against is, I get it, the efficiency of assembling in a factory and maybe even the benefit of quality control and all these other things, and then it's delivered. But there's a level of flexibility or adjustment in real time that I don't want to lose. So how do you think about that tension between, I want the efficiency of modularity in whatever form it is, but I want to be able to, I want the craftsmanship of being able to adjust in real time. How do you manage that?
I mean, my thought, obviously, I'm not an expert in prefabrication, especially when it comes to like electrical equipment, things like that. But my thought is that works in the design, right? A true modular design it should be to where it's able to be flexible and to move from one use to the next use. Unless you're building things and if you're building things that you're only building for today, like that's not the kind of modularity that we should be considering, because we know whether it's 5 or 10 years or anywhere along, technology is going to change, usages are going to change, and so those prefab modular components have got to have some level of customization and adjustment so that you can continue to use that equipment.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of experience doing this. We didn't start there, but let's go there now. How'd you get involved in the industry, and what is your area of expertise, or at least the area you've spent the most time in?
So, I mean, by and large, the most time I've spent is in the data center. when I left school, I went into an electrical apprenticeship program. So I had a foundation on the electrical side, not inside data centers. I was actually doing Sears department stores, so that'll give you a little bit of
Wow.
date. Yeah, it's a long time ago, right? But but I got that just that education of electrical at that point. Some years later, I had met someone, and he was in this industry, and he actually, over a couple of years, recruited me into this industry. And his organization did electrical and then computer cabling. So it was telecom and electrical. And they got into building data centers. And like I said earlier, back in the day, a 1 megawatt data center was huge, right? So we were designing and building data centers at that time, and this is in the early 2000s, right? So that was where I spent most of my time is doing that. So that's kind of my foundation anyway, and I just evolved. As the data centers evolved, I've evolved.
Yeah. Well, you don't look modular. So what are the areas that you've spent time on? When I met you, you were with a different organization and a number of years ago. What are the different areas that you've spent a lot of time in the data center business?
So you're right. I spent 20 years at IES, and I worked on their comm division. So they have electrical, they have commercial, electrical, industrial, and then they have communications. And now they have a number of other things that I'm just not as familiar with because it's evolved since I left. But so my scope was the low voltage side of the world.
Which means what?
So fiber, copper, racks and cabinets, the pathways, the conveyance side of it that carries all the cables around the building.
Okay.
So that's what I did with IES forever. And we got interested in the late 2000s in the colocation market, and so that's kind of the area that I gravitated towards within the organization and was a part of until I left a few years ago. I left, and we talked about those, the organizations that build great teams, right? I left. Another person in our industry, he had another offering. So we were both on a development team. He was doing raised floor, and I was doing communications, and we were working for a data center operator, and we were going all around the country building data centers when it was time to build the cloud out. So from 2011 to like 2018, and we were just on several projects together. And as a result of, being up at 3 o'clock in the morning, making sure things get done like they're supposed to inside of a white space, to, just repetition over years, we became friends. And he had an idea that he wanted to do more than raised floor. He could see the industry going, maybe not going away from raised floor, but that not being the main focus of raised floor. And so he got very passionate about doing something on his own, and he founded a company, MCIS, and his goal was to do specialty services. So still the raised floor. He wanted to bring in the structural ceiling, because if you think of a raised floor, a structural ceiling is just an inverted raised floor. It's the same principle.
Can you explain to people what raised floor means if they're not in our industry or new to it?
Sure. So the raised floor is basically a plenum environment, or it served as a plenum environment forever. Sometimes now that's not the case, but it's basically a sealed floor that's about 3 feet off of the slab. And the idea is that you can design all of your infrastructure to travel within that, in that floor space, and then you can also deliver air conditioning through the floor space. So it's basically a floor that you can stand on just like any other floor, except for it's 3 feet off the slab. So and it can be 12 inches or 2 feet or whatever, but standard is 3 feet.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, he got the idea that he wanted to do structural ceiling. Structural ceiling is very much like the ceiling that you have in this office, right? It looks the same. The only difference is you can hang your truck off of a structural ceiling.
Right.
I think you drive a Ep243.
I do.
Yeah, you can hang it.
I may
off.
try it.
Yeah, you can hang it right off of a structural ceiling. Yeah. So he wanted to do that, and then we, from there he got into doing containment systems to contain the air. It's all basically the same. The raised floor contains the air, the ceiling still contains the air. So he's just kind of evolving this company to do related services. And so that's kind of where he was when I came in. He asked me to come in a few years ago. He said that he had a company. He really thought he was onto something. He wanted to see if he could, bring me on just to kind of help take some of the load. He's a heck of a sales guy on his own, so it wasn't really just being a sales guy. It was really kind of more being a partner. And so I did that, and I will tell you, it was probably the very best move I've ever made in my life. It was just very awesome.
Isn't it awesome when the universe intervenes and chooses to remain anonymous like that?
Yeah.
It's, you and I had lunch earlier today, and we got to talk a little bit about this and the people in our lives that we've got jobs to do. You have expertise. I've got enthusiasm. I don't know if I have expertise, but enthusiasm. And every now and then we get these gems. I know we'll talk about it more later, but it's a great thing. I do want to go here, though, for a second while we're kind of in this zone. With that experience, so what you described was, we're going to come back and talk about some of this in a minute, the pre-cloud era, the cloud era, which we're still in, a lot of water vapor, the mist, the fog, the edge, whatever they are, and now the hyperscale area. These are all additive terms. They didn't, like, there's still the cloud, there's the emerging edge, there's now hyperscale. These things are, what do we keep underestimating, whatever era we're in, when we go to do these projects? Because here's, to me, one of the things that is attractive today, but I think it can be misleading. Gosh, look at this. This is unprecedented. And they're right. It's unprecedented in the speed and scale and whatever. 5 years ago, it was unprecedented. 3 years before that, it was unprecedented. The 5 years before that, it was unprecedented. And I'm not trying to take away from this moment. This is, in my experience, I've been doing this for a long time, unprecedented.
Yep.
What is it that we keep underestimating in each of these eras?
I mean, I continue. I guess it's maybe the soapbox that I stand on. We've talked about it a little bit. To say it in a way that's probably better for the film, it's like it's the you underestimate the need for people who contain a certain level of give a crap. And I'll continue to say that because I just think, like, do you remember? And I know you do. You remember COVID, right? Remember the supply chain issues that we had, right? Like, I mean, gosh, you had to order so far in advance and you couldn't get anything and the whole 9 yards, right? We're in an era now. You can get, they've solved it. You can, they can figure it out. Maybe you have some problems because of tariffs or whatever, but by and large, you can get what you need, right? The factor now, it used to be supply chain. Now it's people chain. And I say that if you look at each one of that, and I have a very good friend, and he was the guy who built those teams to develop all those data centers throughout the cloud development. And, he was very, very talented and unique at being able to build cohesive teams that could produce. And they would produce, they would succeed or die trying. And when I went to come to, when I was evaluating the idea of leaving IES after 20 years, I talked to him because he was the person who recommended that, Roman and I get together. And I said, okay, here's the thing. I don't think there's a problem with being able to find work to do. I don't think I'll have a concern with that. What do you think about MCIS in the way of being able to deliver, right? Because I can sell something one time, but if we don't deliver, we're never getting another one, And he said, Jason, and this, I think, summarizes what I talk about when I talk about the give a crap, right? He said, Jason, all I know is Roman's plan B is to make plan A work. And if you have a guy like that that's willing to do what it takes to make sure that things happen, you'll always be successful, and you will never have to worry about saying sorry. Because like saying sorry is a big part of our world when things fall apart. You know, you're always, I'm sorry our guys didn't do the right thing. I'm sorry we missed that deadline. I'm sorry we didn't get your proposal to you. All of those things, if you have people that truly care and truly are engaged in what you're doing and where the direction you're trying to take your organization in the smaller organization, the grand scheme of the industry, if you have people like that, you're creating something special. So I would say that the thing that's been underestimated most is definitely the people chain and the importance of that.
In the real world, which you just alluded to a minute ago, we have our plan B is make plan A work. For sure, data centers have to be on, we have to be available, we have to be secure. But sometimes it goes sideways. I remember a time in our history many years ago, we didn't think of it as a saving grace moment, but we had a big outage. It was a problem. It's many years ago. I want to say 15 years ago, 16 years ago, something like that. But out of that came our commitment to communication, after action report. We didn't have a choice. It was either, yes, we said we're sorry, but also here's how we're going to cooperate together, be partnerships in more than just words to at least be transparent as we're going through this discovery process and what happened. And then also how do we partner together so that not only does it never happen again. Anyway, the benefit of that was we learned to be transparent in a way that I don't know that we were before. I think we probably intended to, but I don't know if we were. And really it was a differentiator more than, how our tilt-up walls work or our roof membrane worked. It was a differentiator. Have you had that experience?
Well, to answer your question, I'd like to take you back to that incident 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you familiar with it?
I am. But
okay.
The thing that I'm not familiar with that I really truly am asking you about is, do you remember the people in your organization? And this is really kind of what defines an organization in my mind as being successful or not, because organizations are just humans, right? We're all going to make mistakes, everybody. And really what it amounts to is, how do you handle those? When you make a mistake, what do you do after, your after action, that kind of thing? Do you remember the guys that ran to the fire instead of running away from the fire?
Almost all of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the reason why you do is because that's what you see as, hey, we're in a bad spot right now, but this is how we're going to get out of it. And then you look at them, you look around when it's all done, and you go, these are the guys that are going to get me out of that problem if I ever have it again. And so, to me, that's what I look for when we are, building teams and trying to build a company. Is I want a bunch of people that are willing to run into the fire, not run away from the fire. Because sometimes those fires happen.
Yeah. Oh, they'll happen.
Yeah.
They'll happen. One of the things I remember from my military training was they also want you to learn, to a certain degree, the job of the person to your left and to your right. Not just in case, there's some catastrophic event. But if you see your brother or your sister, who not performing at the level, one, they are capable of, and two, it's supposed to go, you're able, especially this works the best when you do it on that personal level. Hey, Jason, what's up? Hey, Dave, what's up? What's going on? What's going on in your world? I know how you normally would deliver this. It's just a bad day. It's just a bad season. And so not only are you able to step in the gap in a catastrophe, but you're able to observe something that maybe, your colleague is just struggling with. It may have nothing to do with the job. It's away from the job, which almost always it is. And when people know, in my experience, that you're that invested in them, you're connected to them, it doesn't matter how technology changes or whether it's modular or not. you guys are in this together, and that's what usually people want to be connected to.
Yep. I agree with that. And that's what we try to build, because we do genuinely care. I think, I've not met a person who cares more about people than Roman. And I like to think that I'm in the same category, and that's the thing, right? Like you said, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, what happened in this generation or that generation? Like there's guys that have been through all that. I'm not the only one, right? And you all find each other, right? And that's how, you create that bond by being good stewards of your friendships and of your performance to each other,
Yeah. So I want you to step back for just a second. So not just people. I want you to think about this, because we're caught up in this people moment, which is where I love to live. I think it's the most important resource. But if you just think about the jobs you've been involved with over the last some amount of time, I'm not going to go back to the Mayflower.
Thank you.
But maybe the USS Constitution, but sometime for the two of us. What mistake do you think that teams just keep making, even though we know better? We all can have an opportunity, and I'm just curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think, and it's just so interesting, right? Because it's like every opportunity you go, okay, we're not going to do it this time, and then it's like every time, right? And what I would say is it's coordination and communication. Like that, those are the things. Like you'd said earlier, like when you walk on a job site, and how can you tell if that job's going well or not going well, right? I would think that you can look earlier than with the job site. When the job site gets started, if you watch how things are being coordinated, how does the engineer and the architect work together? How are they engaging with the trades, and how is the GC managing all of that, right? How is the developer in the middle, the operator? How are they in the middle of making sure that what their vision is actually what is being designed, and how it's all going to come together? So I would say that the part that I see that gets the mistake that gets made over and over again is the lack of coordination or insufficient coordination, which also leads right into insufficient communication.
How do you help orgs with that, or at least just within your own org?
Man, that's the thing that's so interesting. It's such a challenge, and it's like we have very smart people, right? But it's a discipline, and so you have to have a process in place. And then you have to just foster that process. And it goes back to what you were saying about like checking on people, not just did you get your report done? Did you do this? Did you do that? But just how are things going? How are you feeling about where we're at on this project? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you have too much on your plate? Can we get you some assistance? One thing that I say a lot within the organization is I say we are going to foster people's weaknesses and support them, and we are going to capitalize on their strengths. So everybody that we work with, they have some things that they just get excited about and they do very well, and then they have other things that they're weaker on, right? And so the goal is to put it together to where you have people that can support each other's weaknesses and then capitalize on their strengths. And so that's how we're trying to do that.
What does that look like practically?
So here's a quick example, and I wish I could take credit for this, but a very good friend and a mentor taught me this a long time ago. He says, you have these people, you get a project, right? And you assign a project manager, and that project manager is excited to get going, get the materials ordered, get the takeoff done, make sure everything's right, make sure his manpower's lined up, and he's got the office trailer and the equipment, and he gets out there and he just knocks it out of the park, and he does great for the first 90% of the job. That last 10%, the closeout, the documentation, the test results, all the things that you need to be able to close that project out, that's not his program. So you find somebody who gets just excited about that 10% as he did about the first 90%. And you put those two together. And so that's a strategy that we have. We are looking for people who everybody's different, right? So you can find people that have different excitement, different things that excite them. We have a project going that we're working on working to get right now, and it's a federal project, and they're like, look, our submittal process is ridiculous, right? They're like, we can't get these trades, we can't get our current trades on the first phase to follow the process because it's too difficult, and they didn't put the money in to do it, and so it's fighting tooth and nail to get what we need. How are you guys going to do that differently? I said, well, actually, we've anticipated that, right? Well, what do you mean you've anticipated? It's this exactly what we're talking about. We have a group of people that they are excited about clash detection, submittals, material requisitions, everything that happens before you can get on site. We have a group of guys led by an architect with 2 other architects, a structural engineer and an electrical engineer, and that's what they do. And they prepare all that stuff. They sit on all the clash detection meetings. They do the coordination, and that's the part they love. And then they bundle it all up really nice, and they hand it to the project manager. And they stay with him for a little while until he's got it all. And then the project manager, now that's his strength, and he takes it from there. And that's maybe an example of how we're trying to do it a little different.
I heard somebody once say that the reason why the United States military is as good, politics, all that aside, is as good as it is because of their command and control. More than the technology, more than anything else, we're really, really good with professional soldiers and command and control. Is this the area, more than any technology, you think you guys help the most with? It's to help fix, is at least in the area that you have influenced the communication?
That's what we're striving for, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's an everyday goal. If I sat here and told you we had it mastered, you could go outside and talk to Sean and realize that's not the case. So, but that's what we're working towards. And I think we have the right group in place to make that happen. And it is a never-ending endeavor for sure.
You and I do these conferences, do public speaking on occasion, certainly attend them, if not actually do the speaking. That's got to be one of the most common things talked about is get us involved early, open lines of communication, transparency, all these things. They all come back into this broader bucket of communication. But communication, I remember Sheila Montgomery, my chief people officer, one of the things she talked to us about was people don't necessarily need more words. They need more valuable, actionable, what do you want me to do with this? How does this apply? Where can I step in? All of us have so much noise in the system. So how do you help in this context that you're talking about, at least for you personally, how do you help manage that?
It's an interesting way because you're so right. Like you can inundate someone with emails and voicemails and all that, and it actually becomes a detriment rather than productive, right?
Right.
And I would say that's one of those things that we try to do in the organization is just, look, we don't need to have 2-hour meetings. We can have 30 to 60-minute meetings. If we have other topics that need to be covered, we can take them offline or we can reschedule and pick it up. It doesn't have to be so much all at one time, right? Emails the same way, right? Reporting systems. Obviously, there are things that are necessary, but there's a lot of things that happen in a normal organization that are not necessary. Yeah. So we're striving to kind of find that line, find the balance, make sure we're delivering what the customer needs us to deliver as far as reporting and status and all that, but not inundate our people with stuff that's really kind of minutia.
Yeah. Well, if you figure out how to do that, great. That's what your product should be, and sell that, because I think all of us are.
It's tough, right?
Our phone, our inbox, the meetings. I was working with some of my folks out of Kansas City, the brand and marketing group. I roll up in that group. My leader is is the leader of that group. And I was in a few of their calls, and there's just such a volume of things they have to keep up with. I just don't know how to do it. Like I don't even know how they keep up with their meeting invite. Anyway, that's a black hole I can't solve.
In no way,
Yeah.
right? There's no way to cover it in this time.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You were earlier saying a phrase that my heart sings with joy, and that is the raised floor, for a couple of reasons. Technology and one, just a story. Years ago, it has to be at least 12 years ago, probably, like I'm thinking 2012 era, so 15, 16 years ago. And, or not that long ago, I guess that would be 13, 14 years ago. But anyway, doing a tour in one of our facilities that has a 48-inch raised floor. So the distance from the slab to the tile that all the gear sits on is 48 inches. We were touring this group of executives, and this one executive, new to data center, said, well, how tall is your raised floor? And I said, well, it's 48 inches. And they said, my goodness, that's almost 4 feet. And my eyes started, I thought it was just another Clemson grad down here in the SEC. No, but one of the things that we keep hearing because of high density, the weights, new designs, that the raised floor, it's dead. Or at most, it's going to be, you might see it in a cloud deployment. But we've talked about it several times today. Do you think that's true, or is there still a role for the raised floor?
There's most certainly a role for raised floor. What's interesting is the delivery methods of the infrastructure and the way that it's currently being designed and delivered and deployed is exclusive of the raised floor, right? In some instances, but there are other instances where the raised floor is the preferred and designed way to go. We're building brand new data centers that have raised floor right now. So it really does depend on what the application of the facility is, and then what the limitations of the environment are. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you can go raised floor or not go raised floor.
What do you think the most common reason is why you want to keep a raised floor around?
Well, I think a lot of times you have, for instance, there's a common design where all the service galleries are raised floor, and the data halls are slab, right? The idea is you build those service galleries you build the service galleries with raised floor. That helps with evolution, right? So you can go from a raised floor service gallery into a slab data hall, and there's no problem. But if you have an application for a raised floor inside a data hall, and you have your service gallery on a slab, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And so, like, having a future-proof idea of being able to, hey, we have the service galleries are raised floor. You have the choice. Do you want to go raised floor, or does your application call for slab? And so it's a flexibility application.
Why do you think somebody wouldn't want to enable themselves of that flexibility? Like, it seems, I loathe the term future-proof. I've heard it for 20 years, and yet the future still comes, and we're still doing something
different.
having
to do something different.
Why do you think somebody, like, what would be the reason why not to have a raised floor? Or what would be let's just leave it at that. What would be the reason why somebody wouldn't want a raised floor, even if it's just in the service gallery?
We have a couple of applications going right now. We have one application going where the utility delivery of the water, the electrical, all of that, it couldn't sit on a raised floor. It's too heavy. I mean, you're talking about some serious weight. What we've evolved into is this design, manufacture, and build of this conveyance system that goes around the data center that carries the water, carries the power, carries all of that racking system that we're building out of steel. It's too heavy to go on a raised floor. There's not a raised floor out there that's heavy, that's robust enough to handle something like that. And then we have applications where they're 4,500 pounds of cabinet going in there. So you just start to look at that. If right now today they're 4,500 pounds of cabinet, a raised floor can accommodate that. But what's the next step, right? And so as you start to look at what you're developing, who your customer is, that's when you determine whether you want to do a raised floor or not.
When we say raised floor, we're usually thinking of some sort of steel infrastructure sitting on top of concrete. Think there'll ever be a time where it's normal for us to just perforate down through the concrete? And so the quote unquote raised floor, so your gear's on the concrete slab of whatever this floor is, and then you've got a whole floor underneath it, the basement, however you want to describe it, but you've got this infrastructure because you want the flexibility of moving in between the infrastructure that's serving the IT load. Like that's the whole reason why we did the raised floor in the beginning, right? I want to cold air plenum. I run my usually high voltage underneath there. There are things that it's out of the way of the technician's feet, even if there's a service gallery. And then I put my low voltage and other things above them. That's sort of the traditional design.
That's a traditional design. Yep.
Could you see a time, so to get rid of the raised floor, to your point, especially when we're talking about a high density infrastructure, well, you're running cooling infrastructure. You're running probably DC power, certainly high amperage AC power. You've got connectivity. You got all of these things coming in. Does it go in between the racks and around them? Does it go on the floor? Does it go above them? Or do we perforate down below? This is a conundrum we're all trying to figure out.
And I think we've seen a little bit of that, right? You've seen a little bit of that in the slab where they're kind of going, below the slab with some of this infrastructure. It's definitely not the area that I'm the smartest about. Like I don't have that kind of design. That's not the part that I do, but I have seen that before. So I think it's probably going to evolve to something like that, or it's definitely, I would say that there's going to be any number of plans on how to solve this, right? And we're all kind of sitting around waiting to see what happens, right?
Yeah.
What the smart guys like you come up with. Hey, let's build it like this. All right, we'll do that for 5 years and see how it goes.
Well, I think they come up with a lot of designs. It would be interesting to see, because we're in a real season of iteration and non-standardization. After we just went through a couple decades of working at standardization, it won't last forever, this, I don't want to say Wild West, because these are really smart engineers that are very serious about safety and organization. So I don't want to imply to sort of get a badge and, in a 6-shooter. I just mean that a number of ways are being tried to solve the problem. And so it'll be interesting. Some of the designs today are interesting, but what will be really interesting is 5 years from now, what have we agreed to that has stuck for the next 10 years worth of problems we're trying to solve?
Yeah, and to kind of expand on what you're saying, you think about the people who are involved in coming up with those designs and those concepts and the money that's behind them.
Yeah.
It's no joke. These guys are no joke. They are spending their time figuring out how they're going to do this better in a year, in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like when you say in 5 years, I go, in 5 years, man, who knows? Because it's moving so fast, and the designs and the improvements on the designs are just happening. You have a campus, and there's 10 buildings on that campus. By the time they get to 3, they've changed it 3 times because they're making it better every single time, right? Yeah. And that's the part we get involved in on the design side, and on that specialty, like these racking systems and things like that, is helping to come up with the improvements, right? But what I think is very interesting is, I would tell you that we're a trade company, right? We do installation, but the requirement that evolution presents is that even an organization like us has a staff of architects and engineers already, right? And I think if you want to continue, like you say, in 5 years, what's it going to look like? If you want to continue to be around in 5 years, that's the kind of investment you need to make, because you've got to have a think tank of your own that can then associate with the other guys who are highly motivated and heavily funded to make sure that they're getting it done right.
Do you think that's the hidden complexity of these high, especially high density builds? It doesn't feel like this is it for the cloud builds, which tend to be CPUs, not GPUs. But there is a lot of complexity with high density, because that means compression. You've got to push the stuff together. the network and the compute and the storage and all the systems that feed them.
And you got to do it faster.
Yeah.
Right? More efficient. Like you start to think about the complexity of a hyperscale environment, and that's definitely something that you have to consider. And that's kind of like I say, that's what's driving us. We have to we want to be out in front of it. We want to be able to we want to be able to be that organization that as you are working through that program, maybe you don't call us until, for a bid on a raised floor or a structural ceiling for another 8 months. But today you're trying to solve the problem of how you're going to bring two 18-inch liquid pipes around your data center, and how do we best do that, and what can we design? We're trying to be that organization that you go, we can call those guys. They know how to do this. They can figure it out.
The temptation for a lot of us is, it's just piping. Like we've done piping since we began, making bricks for the Egyptians, like or whatever, right? That if we're not careful, that's for some in the org that aren't really close to it. Like, I mean, it's a box. It's just these things. Isn't it? So maybe it's bigger or whatever, but it's really just this thing, and that can be a slippery slope into misunderstanding the complexities this orchestration that we're trying to manage.
Well, as you say that, what I think about is I think about QTS, I think about Meta, I think about Microsoft, I think about organizations like you guys. One of the very highest priority things that you guys, hang your hat on is safety. You go, it's just a box. Maybe it's a little bigger and all that, but there's some of these sites you guys got 1,000, 2,000 people on, and you're making sure that every one of those people go home the same way they came to the office today, right? And so you think about all those complexities and what we're trying to do, and the fact that the way that you guys are driving it, the way that Microsoft and Meta are driving it, it's all like we want to be safer than we were yesterday. We want you to leave at least in the same way you came, if not better.
Right.
And
presuming you were sober when you got here.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But all the digits, you're right.
That's right. And so like the industry is driving a culture, right? And that's a whole nother level of complexity in my mind that you have to look at when you go, oh well, maybe it's just a box. I mean, it is a little, maybe it's bigger, right? But it's but there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, you're a senior leader at your org, and you help install boxes. Like what we're talking about here. There's real world pressure on these foremen and these techs and the project manager for that matter. Like all of these groups to deliver on time and on budget, and there's unscheduled interruptions, nobody's fault. There's just whatever, things happen. How do you help instill a culture of focus? I mean, we've talked about the military a lot. I just remember my time in when I was in the Army. I did have Velcro on my stripes, so there was a time or two I needed my attitude adjusted. But we went to the range a lot. We were dealing with live ammo. We jumped out of airplanes. You're driving vehicles. And it's weird when you're standing up to go out that door and you're 5,000 feet in the air, or it's a combat jump and you're 1,200 feet in the air, you're like everybody's inspecting everything. There's a heightened sense of security. But when you're just walking to chow and you just help down in the motor pool, it's easy to get, because you're familiar with it. Nobody's shooting at you. You're not lock and loading your weapon. You know what I mean? Those accidents do still happen. That's not what I mean. But
yeah,
it's installing an outlet in your home, and you're not paying attention to did you ground it or whatever. And so we're moving it, the organization. So not my org, not your org, just as an industry. How do you help as a leader, just in general, keep us focused on, hold on, We do all have this philosophy. If we don't, we're getting rid of that organization or that person. But it's the simple thing, not just the one that's flashing red, that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. How do you help foster that?
We have it's a saying, I can't take credit for it. It was one I learned a very long time ago. People do what you inspect, not what you expect. Mm. And so in our organization, we take that to heart. And what we're trying to teach is it's a culture. It's just part of every day. It's like, if you snap your fingers, right? You know how to do that. You've done it so many times, you know how to snap your fingers. Like, that's what we're wanting in safety. We want, like, that's just their second nature. You know how to do that. Before you walk on a QTS site, you've got your glasses, you've got your vest, your hard hat, the right boots. You got everything you need, your gloves, before you go through that turnstile, And sometimes those lessons are hard, right? Sometimes even the most simple thing like that, you got to get stopped and turned around at the gate, and you got to go outside and put it on again,
Yeah.
So, but that's what we're trying to do. That's the way that we're trying to do it.
Yeah. They just drilled this lesson into me about 6 months ago. I've been here 21 years. And every now and then I forget my badge or whatever. I usually keep it in my vehicle or nearby, muscle memory. We've got a system. It's not new, but it's inspected, not expected. And if you forget your badge, you can't just get your temp badge. You have to get your supervisor to open it. Like, there's this painful, logged process. And I almost feel like that cop on those YouTube shorts that's been pulled over by another cop. Do you know who I am? I'm a big deal. I've been here. I'm employee 32. Can it? Like, that's, it comes up, and like, you just got to follow the process. Do you know how many times I've tried to walk in the building with my forgotten badge? If I somehow left it on my dresser at home and I can go home and get it and come back, I'm not going through that process.
That's
I'd rather show up 30 minutes late on the log than have to go through that pain.
That's 100%. Well, that's what they've done. They've created a circumstance that you want to do. You're going to do it right because you don't want to go through the pain,
Bureaucracy drives me nuts. Let me ask you this. And again, whether this is your exact level of expertise or just your experience, we've been doing this for a minute. What decision do you think makes the biggest impact, whether it's in the design phase, the build phase, what are those two phases that 5 years from now, we're still using that white space, that data hall? Like, it's still functioning. It's doing the job that it was intended to do. What decision do you think has the most impact on that?
I mean, and again, you're right. Like, that's probably not my strongest suit as far as like answering, but I would say that you're definitely talking about making sure that the decision to do the power right when you start.
What does that mean? What do you think the power right?
Well, so, you're going to build a substation, and the substation only needs to be this size right now. Mm. But because we all know that they're going to continue, right?
Right.
I mean, and I wouldn't even just say substation or electrical. I would say like that critical infrastructure, the things that feed the data center that are always going to be needed, and they're only likely going to increase. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody comes up with a great technology that means we don't need as much power to run these things, but until that day comes, I think we got to be planning for the fact that we're going to continue to need more power and more infrastructure, whether it's fiber or, making sure that when you're building something, the decision you're making is that you can expand whatever it is to accommodate what's ever coming.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. The house you live in today, is it bigger than the house you lived in 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. The house that you lived in 20 years ago, if you had just been given I don't know, 500 square feet more, it would have felt like, look at this. I got all this space.
What am I going to do with all
What
this
am I going to
space?
do this? And now, you've probably got more than that laying around. For my wife and I, it was when our kids are out, they're all artists, all in their late 20s, out of the house. We have still managed to pack not just every square foot of our very modest, less than 2,000 square foot house, and the attic, and the garage. Can no longer park on her side of the garage. It is packed with stuff. And so we had this illusion, man, we're not even going to know what to do with this space or this freedom. We find a way, it's just human nature. We find a way to pack it full of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we hear a lot, the densification is going to collapse. And I don't have a dog in this fight. Big data center, small data center, like we're agnostic. We build, design, operate data centers. Whether they're big ones or they're intermediate size or smaller or whatever, we want to serve a clientele. Do you think, and again, I'm just curious in your opinion, do you think data centers are going to get smaller, or were they going to get larger? And let me just give you a context. I don't know, 15 years ago, I bought my first plasma computer, or plasma television. Took like 3 of us to hang it on the wall. If it was a desert scene from Lawrence of Arabia and you stood in front of the plasma, you probably got a sunburn. Like, this thing was heavy and it was bright. I'm pretty sure by myself, maybe with the help of our cat, I hung our 70-inch TV on the wall. It's 1/100th of the power. It's 100 times more the clarity and the experience. I don't need less space. I need less power, but I'm still packing more in. What's that balance?
I was going to say, your other TV would give you a sunburn and you needed 4 people to put it in, but this one is probably 3 times larger than that one, right?
It is.
So whether you are using the power or not, you're using the space, and I could see the same thing in the data center, right? So you have this space and it's built, and right now you're doing, you could pick any number of amount of, wattage that's going to a rack. If the product requires less, you're just going to put more in there. Right. And the way that we're going, like, do you remember? I remember someone said the average consumer, it wasn't even American, the average consumer is going to have 6 connected devices. And I just went, what the heck are you going to do with 6 connected devices? Now it's like 10, right?
I think it's actually up to like 22 if you think about your thermostat and everything.
Everything, right? So I think that part is still going to probably, it's going to continue to evolve. I don't know if we're going to go back to, those data centers where we're high-fiving each other over a megawatt or not. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I also don't know if we're going to continue to build these gigantic centers, or if they're just going to. What could happen, what I could see happening, is I could see us building this AI infrastructure that we're doing right now that are requiring these large sites, and there's a number of them all over the country going right now. I could see, once that evolution is done, us going back and rebuilding the cloud, upgrading the cloud, and those centers, right? I could see a diversification between giant sites and single building sites and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my thought on it anyway.
That makes sense. I mean, there's a level of efficiency you get from a large, just like if you had a distribution warehouse for products that we order from our phones or whatever. There's value in a distribution warehouse where when they're ordered, they're delivered there, and they're within 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever the right distance is. That's a balance of over-the-road vehicles. We don't want so many of that. We'd rather have it in the middle of the night through big vehicles than 1,000 little ones running back and forth. Whatever the combination is, we'll keep sorting it out. But that we can distribute it just in time, whether that's food or stuff or, in our discussion, data. But then you've got different ancillary sizes depending upon where you are and the need. And I do think that there will, Steve Altazir was on the podcast a while ago, and he was talking about, he said, I think it's going to be a mesh. It's going to be all of it. Little ones, little 1 megawatt, maybe container deployments, 35 megawatt, whatever the geographic footprint of that is, big campuses of hundreds, if not thousands of megawatts performing different roles, or maybe even intermeshed with some version of a variety of roles, if that makes sense.
It does, and I could see that too. And I remember hearing a while back when they were talking about, there's going to be, it's going to be a data center cabinet, and you're going to have one on every light pole.
That's probably true.
Yeah, like that was a while back. It hasn't really evolved or hasn't developed, but like that's a consideration. But each one of those are going to talk back to another facility, right? So it's just a matter of how they, and like you said, how they decide to mesh it, how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Guy's a lot smarter than me figuring that out.
Well, there's a lot of I don't know if they're figuring it out, but there's a lot of conversations. They used to invite me, and I found it as an opportunity to perfect my stand-up comedy routine. It wasn't as appreciated as you might imagine. Hey, we talked earlier about people, one of my favorite topics to talk about. Whatever else happens with technology, I think at least in my organization, our secret sauce far and away is the culture of the people, right? What's your North Star? What's your core value? How do you navigate towards that? And there's always going to be pressure against that. We bought a boat during COVID, which I still enjoy. One of the things I learned really quickly, even though I'm only on a lake, when I turn off the motor, like it's not forces around it are going to act on it. And if I don't have it under power or tied up, it's going to get moved where those forces want to move it. That's just fact of life. And so if you think about, as we've sort of talked about this whole time, scale, speed, this compression on people, the trades usually. So when we talk the tradespeople, it's usually not the white collar, it's the blue collar, either in the data center or building the data center or commissioning the data or something. As we think about that, do you think this compression of scale and speed, what do you think the impact, I guess, is of that on these people that are serving this and the opportunities for them, but also what's the impact for them and maybe accuracy, et cetera?
I think that could be looked at a couple different ways, right? Okay. I mean, you obviously have that impact, like you said. You got trades people. We've made a determination that about 60 hours a week is as much as someone can work with and still have a level of safety that we require, right? So that means that if you have something that requires more than that from someone, then you're having a backup. Right. You're having backup people, right? So I think that you have to look at that. You have to make that determination within your organization and the level of delivery that you're doing to make sure that you're not endangering people and you're not just on the safety side, but just their mental well-being, So I see that as a drawback, but I also see then on the other side the opportunity that this is creating, like this compression and the need for things to go faster and to get done in more detail and delivery, just your delivery dates and all of those things I see as opportunity. And we talked earlier about like the prefab offsite. We've been successful in setting up operations that are not in geographies where data centers are to do prefab. And you go, oh, well, so what? It's like, well, the so what on it is we've got facilities that are 2 days from just about any data center you need to go to, right? But we've taken these towns that are all across America that they don't have they did their industry, whatever it was, maybe maybe it's died. Maybe there's not opportunity for a young man who's just out of high school or out of trade school unless they move away, right? And so we've been able to revitalize some of these towns by setting up manufacturing opportunity or operations and giving these young people opportunities to have a career, have medical insurance, be able to have a life, basically, you know? So I see that as a great opportunity that compression is fostering, right? Because with greater need becomes greater need, right? Like they need something and you have the ability to serve it and you can bring people in. And that's one thing that we really try to do is like better the lives of the people that have entrusted their livelihood and their family's livelihood with us, you know?
I had this come home to roost. As you're describing this, it reminded me of summer of 25. I was in Iowa multiple times, but I was there for an event. I was speaking at some event. And several people came up to me afterwards. And QTS is a large project going on in Cedar Rapids. And they just talked about the difference. They weren't even directly involved in the data center design or build. They were ancillary services that were adjacent, or they experienced some other interaction with us. And I don't want to make it an infomercial for us, but where it came to roost was this was an unexpected benefit. Some of these were not-for-profit organizations, so they weren't really anywhere near part of the design, build, or operated data center. But when we go into an area, we bring in our culture, we bring in our volunteerism, we bring in these things, and we try to do it from day one. And all I mean, without belaboring this, is these tentacles that go out, I believe, for human flourishing for good. We're going to hire from that community, both in the build phase and in the operate phase. We're going to, at least our history has been for 21 years. I hope it is for however long on my watch, another 21 years. And that really resonates with people. You still got to be safe. You still got to be mindful of the environmental resources that we have to be good stewards of, and the traffic and urban planning, and these things are spectacularly important. But if done well, and with I think a focus, there's so much opportunity. But there's also, if there's a lot of pressure with this stuff, right? On the people, on the design, on the infrastructure. And when you have pressure, if you don't keep your eye on the ball, you can get sideways quick.
Yep. And I mean, the pressure, you think about that. And I know I know the way that you guys operate. And I know that you have, 1,000, 1,200 people on that site right now?
Something like that, maybe more now.
So, the pressure that you guys have, back to what I said, you're taking care of 1,200 families out there. That's how we look at it.
Yeah. It's a privilege, but it's
Very
also,
much.
you and I get pretty emotional about this. But it's our founder, my current CEO's, it's at least, my experience, my worthy competitors, I know many of them. Some of them have been employees here, or whatever. They love to, they love to slap me around. But when organizations do this well, I don't want to be melodramatic, but for lack of a, you fall in love with each other, or at least you fall in love with the idea of servicing.
Yep.
It just leads us to the best of us, I think.
And that's what we're trying to do as an organization. Like we're bringing people together, and what we want is we want this employee to know that he's not just working for himself. He's got all of these other employees that depend on him to do what he's supposed to do, and he's not going to fail for them. And transversely, they're not going to fail for him, right? And that's kind of the culture that we're building, is that we don't want to fail for each other, and subsequently, we don't want to fail for our customer, right? That kind of comes to our saying, which is mission first, people always. And that's the idea.
I don't know if this is still true. I can be fact checked on this. But I remember listening to a former commander. I believe they were special operations. I don't remember if they were Rangers or SEALs, but They talked about the re-enlistment rate of these soldiers, men and women, in all of the armed forces that were re-enlisting during, like after 2 tours or 3 tours during the Gulf War. Like they had been in real stuff. While I was in the Army, I'd never had to go to combat, thank goodness. And the number one reason why they re-enlisted was not their commitment to the country, although they love their country. It was not their insecurity of leaving the military. It was their concern for their brothers and sisters that were in the show that they'd leave. And so they wanted to come back so they could be part of that. Now, you go to war for a long time. I'm not going to wade into the consequences of that. But at that time, that's why people re-enlist. Like or you're a forest ranger or whatever. Like I know these people. I know our mission. And I don't want them to be vulnerable. I want to be part of it. At least the ones who stick. Like, the ones that stick around for a while that make a culture, that tends to be the common thing, not whether they're a veteran or a first responder background or whatever, but they find in themselves this connection.
And it's like I think you alluded to earlier, working for something greater than yourself, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I want to keep it with people, but I want to move from people up to the people with organizations. So people within organizations, not just people. If I heard it once, I've heard it a bazillion times. We're all about great partnerships. We're all about great partnerships. And I believe my CEOs would say we are about great partnerships. I completely believe it. But when you hear that, to you, what does that mean? What makes a great partnership?
I mean, a great partnership, and I think what you're speaking to is kind of along the lines of the developer, the subsequent subcontractors, the general contractor, that kind of thing.
The people that have to partner together to design, build, operate, and maintain critical infrastructure.
So you've been, and I'm sure you've been witness to it, I've been a part of teams where, and there are organizations out there that when something goes wrong, they burn you at the stake.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
They may not even wait for the stake.
Right. They're just going to burn you.
Right.
There are other organizations that when something goes wrong, and I've had some big go wrongs, right, in my career. Just some things that, like you said, unforeseen, unfortunate, right? They go, yes, this is a problem. Let's all get in here. We'll get it figured out. You guys get here. We'll get here. We'll see you in an hour. It's like midnight. You're out there at 1 o'clock in the morning figuring out how this or that happened. But they're standing next to you. And there's no, you did this and you this and you that. Mr. Customer, this guy screwed it up and we're going to get after him and we're going to mess that up. It's like we're going to make sure that he pays for this, that kind of thing. It's about we have an issue. We still have a goal. Let's come together and we'll figure this out, right? And I would say that you've been witness and I've been witness to both sides of that, right? You can have that relationship that is very transactional, by the book, according to the contract. This is the way this, written for them. Right. And you have to work within those means if you want to work on that project. Right. And then you have these other guys and they go, look, yes, we need to make money, but we're going to make sure the client's happy first and we're going to make sure everyone's safe and we're going to make sure this job gets done. And then we'll come back around and we'll figure out who needs to do what after that. And so like when you ask me what's a successful team, I would say the latter is the successful team. And every team I've been a part of in my career is that.
So I want you to be Jason Coe 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And so you're a few years into your career. You're not a senior leader yet. You got to hit your quota. And your quota could be you're a job foreman and you've got to get gear parked within this fence. You need to get it parked. You need to get it inventoried. You need to make sure the trades are where they are. So you're a junior foreperson, just kind of a supervisor, right? Coming up through the ranks, whatever it is. And you're trying to develop your skill in determining who's going to be a good partner with me? What does that look like? How do you do that?
Well, it's funny because I have a little bit of a story of my early career that was a lot like that.
Okay, let's hear it.
In my early career, I came into the industry, and I told you that a friend brought me in. Mm-hmm. We did electrical communications, right? We were GCing small little data centers, is what it amounts to. 800-foot, 1,000-foot data center, that kind of thing. That's what was happening at the time, right? And in order to develop that business, my goal and my kind of objective was to go meet everybody in the industry. I wanted to know everybody. I wanted to understand what this guy did and what that guy did and what trade and how does that associate with that, and where would we maybe be able to work together, or where could we help each other. I just wanted to know. I wanted to know everybody, right? And so I spent my early career meeting everybody. And I had a mental list, and my mental list was get it, don't get it, right? And my list has lasted, and obviously now I'm past going and meeting everybody because there's no way anymore. I don't know if you've been to one of these conferences lately. Yeah. You don't know anybody, or I don't anyway. Right. But at the time when I was building that, it wasn't that I was like, you're a good guy or you're not a good guy. It's you're not the guy who will run to the fire. You'll run away from the fire, right? And I spent my time then developing that mental list, and then making sure to vet it and make sure, okay, well, are you on the right list? Are you the get it guy, or are you the not get it guy, right? And that's how I developed it. That's how I developed just, like you say, put yourself in that role. For me, that's what it was, because what I was doing is building a network, and that network is what has carried me through my career. Even now, a lot of those guys are guys I still connect with regularly. They're still in the industry. I'm still in the industry. We're still doing our thing, sometimes together, sometimes not together. Some guys I don't get to see as often as I used to, but that's kind of something that I did along the way. Is that's how I created it.
Did you ever think to yourself that you wanted to make sure that if they pull up the list of one of your peers that you were on the right, you would be on a ledger side that you wanted to be?
I know for sure there's probably somebody listening to this thing that has a problem with me, right? But I will tell you that I've spent my career...
Not including the host.
Right, not including the host, because we already know we used it. But I've spent my career exactly trying to do that, trying to be the right person, and I say it all the time, and I say it all the time, and some people it resonates with, and some people it doesn't. But we're all playing for an audience of one.
Yeah. And
so that's the way that I've tried. And believe me, when I was a kid and younger, I did lots of stupid stuff and didn't have the same perspective that I have now, know. But every day I worry about that list. Just like you said, I worry about somebody else's list and where I'm at on it. Not because I care what people think of me as much as I care about being the right type of person, in general.
Yeah. You just want him to be able to say truthfully, whatever else you say about Coe, he'll run to the fire.
That's right.
He'll run to the fire.
Yep.
When I was a kid in the Army, I joined because I've listed many reasons here, none of them good. And all that stuff followed me into the military, and I was just in trouble all the time. And I guarantee you, if you were to interview except for maybe that last year, most of the cadre that I worked for, they'd have been like, oh, he was not, he was not a run to the fire kind of person. And there's probably a lot of truth in that. And over time, when you're confronted with that, man, that hurts. And you, at least in my case, you're like, I don't want to, that's not what I want to be known for. I want to avoid the fire. If I can avoid the fire, like, let's not have a fire.
Right.
But how do I pivot so that I'd be one of those people? And it's, some people, it's just instinctive right off the bat. A few of us just gotta.
You learn.
You gotta go through that. sometimes many times. But I do think that that's one of those things that we hope to have conversations with men and women that are in that junior to intermediate stage of their life where this is still much more malleable than later.
And I'll tell you what, being a person who has got a whole bunch of those people in our company, it's so much fun.
It is.
It is so much fun. They're got such great energy, and just it's great to watch them develop and grow, and it's so much fun to be able to be a part of that, you know. And we've got the thing that I would also say is Roman is the kind of person that you want, if you're a young person, you watch that guy and you go, that's what I want to be when I grow up. He's just that kind of guy, you know. So it's a lot of fun to just be a part of that, having those young people, bunch of people that are, early, mid, late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. Like we've got some young guys that are coming up, guys and girls,
Yeah. One of the cool things I think in our industry, because so many new people are joining it from other industries, even if they're in their 40s or 50s, they have an opportunity to reinvent themselves. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows me here. I get a chance to... maybe I was in a rut somewhere else in my way I was thinking or behaving, and now I'm going to take this opportunity to be free of that or some version of that.
That's a great observation.
I didn't really get my act together until my early 30s. It was 10 years after the military of just
I'll let you know when I get mine together.
Yeah, that's hopefully nobody in my family listens to this. Well, we've talked for a minute. I want us to end here, if you don't mind. Or one, is there anything that we should have talked about that we didn't? But my question for you is, as you're thinking about our industry, critical infrastructure, data centers, and the next, whatever your time frame is, 5 years, 10 years, whether it's the people, it's the infrastructure itself, whatever. What have we been marginally good at? And it's okay. We could take healthy criticism that you hope we finally really start to get right. And maybe what have we gotten right, or at least more often than not landed in the on that correct side of the ledger in your estimation, that whatever else happens, however else design changes, we don't lose that.
That's so interesting, and it's hard for me because I think what you're looking for is a real technical kind of answer.
However you're thinking about it.
Yeah, and the way I think about it is, I think about, and you and I have touched on this too. Like right now, our company's up to 250 employees, and we're probably here in the next month probably be at 300, right?
Yeah.
And I think about like what those people mean to me and the importance that I have on making sure that every day they have a place to go and work and earn a safe way, earn a safe living, get to have Christmas, get to have birthdays and all that with their families, and the trust that they put in me and Roman to make sure that we deliver that, right? So when you say, what have we done marginally well, I would say as an industry, we've done that pretty well. I mean, if you really kind of look at the industry, and it's not, you look at what we're building and the scale of what's going on, it's still a pretty small industry.
Yeah.
And if you look around and you look at some of the people that you work with, maybe you work next to or even competitors, like I really feel like something that we've done right as an industry is to have that same, I don't want to say stress or load, I would say more conviction that we have people that depend on us to do what we do, right? And I think as a common denominator, you could see that and feel that about the industry. I can't think of a company in our industry that I would say, oh yeah, that's a terrible company. They don't take care of their people.
Right.
I can't think of one like that, So I think we've done that marginally well.
Yeah. When you said small, I think you mean it could be big buildings. There's a lot of conversations, but it's very intimate.
Yes.
You do not have 7 degrees of separation. You got usually 2, probably no more than 4,
Right.
but 2 to 4 degrees of separation up and down the largest cloud companies on earth to, the largest contractors to the most intimate local, somebody out of Cleveland, Ohio, right, is connected 1 to no more than probably 3 or 4 degrees away from you if they're connected to our industry.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think the esprit de corps that you find as an average across is very high, especially for those who stick with it. I just think it's just the people that are attracted to it, and I think we need to guard it jealously.
Mm-hmm.
One of the areas I think that we could, I'd love your reaction to this, to get better at, until, I don't know, even post-COVID, I would say 21, maybe 22, either people didn't know what a data center was or even think about it, or it was the one that helped us ride through the COVID virus challenges, because you could do remote learning, you could do telehealth. There was all these things that it enabled. And then whatever the time frame is, but a few years ago, because of the acceleration of certain technologies, not just AI, but a lot of technologies, there is a growth explosion of infrastructure everywhere, and that the impact of that, and then the people trying to explain to the communities that these things were going in that were surprised were a bunch of introverted engineers, or they're a goofball like me who's not an introvert, but didn't look like they knew what they were talking about when they come and show up and talk to data centers. And so you're trying to, whether it's to the government organizations or the utility organizations, or especially to just regular civic community organizations. And there's so much, to our point from earlier in our conversation, noise in the system, what's true, what's not true. And what I hope we are not making the mistake of 5 to 10 years from now, that we as an industry get really elegant at. It's not being manipulative. It's not with messaging. It is being able to sit down and listen with real people like we're doing right now across the table, and listen to what's the concern of the community that we want to bring infrastructure to, that we think is going to benefit them, the people that work in and around the data center, the people that are serviced by that data center in general as citizens, but also within that community, and that we get really good at both listening and having conversations that connect with people so they understand the entire implication of critical infrastructure like this for their life.
I mean, I think you said it. It's that education, and it's an education on a very personal, human way, right? Mm-hmm. Not just putting out a flyer that says this is what a data center is, right?
Right.
Like you have to go out there. It's a community outreach kind of a scenario. I see you guys doing that very well. Like I see a couple of other operators that do it well, as just having to go to the town hall meetings and speak. But it's usually kind of a hostile environment when you go in like that. But that's where the eloquence comes in, and being able to explain it and help people to understand that it's not.
It can be lumpy.
Yeah,
it can be lumpy. But I really believe, look, you have conversations with family members. You have conversations with neighbors about things when you're kind and not being nice. That can be hard. Now, you may be wrong, but you're certain. Like, I think this is truth. And the reason why I'm willing to have a conversation or sit and listen is because I care about you. And I don't want to talk about organizations as if they're people, but people make up these organizations, right? And so I want to be able to have a real conversation with my employees. I want to have a real conversation with my leadership. I want to have a real conversation with the communities that I believe it's for our both benefit to engage in. And what I'm saying is, I think there's an opportunity for us as an industry, because it's not our nature is to make sure these pipe fittings go together securely and safely.
Right, like you said, it's the nature is kind of that introverted engineer.
And we need to some degree. Either where you started this whole conversation off with, how do I find people? They want the 90% of this, and others that want the 10%. How do I find the evangelists? How do I find the people that are able to come to a community. And so they're in love with data center and they're in love with infrastructure. But their skill set is communicating and listening and articulating and bringing the organizations together along with those local communities. And if we can get better at that, but first listening and then communicating, I think it'll benefit all of us.
Well, and you said it, first listening, right? The first thing is to understand what their concerns are, because those concerns can be well-founded or they can be misplaced, right? And so that's how you learn how to address them, is to figure out what are your real concerns, and how can we do something either in compromise or in concert with what your concerns are as a community, so that we can coexist, right?
Yeah. Coexist. I like it. That's probably a good place to land for today.
Yeah.
Jason, thanks for coming in the show. I
Hey,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for having me.
My great pleasure. Hey, everybody, if you liked that conversation, hit the like button. If you loved it, hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.